Alright, guys, let's start. Chapter 26. Yes, very salutary, said Arthur, after Slarted Barfast had related the salient points of this story to him. But I don't understand what all this has got to do with earth and mice and things. But this is but the first half of the story, Earthman, said the old man. If you will care to discover what happened 7.5 million years later, on the great day of the answer, allow me to invite you to my study where you can experience the events yourself on our tape records. That is, unless you would care to take a quick stroll on the surface of New Earth. It's only half completed, I'm afraid. We haven't even finished buying the artificial dinosaur skeletons in the crust yet. Then, we have the tertiary and quaternary periods of the Cenozoic era to lay down, and no, thank you, said Arthur. It wouldn't be quite the same. No, said the Slarty Barfast. It won't be. And he returned the air car round and headed back to the mind-numbing wall. What the fuck? That was just one page. Slarty Barfast. I can't pronounce that. Chapter 27. Slarty Barfast's study was a total mess, like the results of an explosion in a public library. The old man frowned as they stepped in. Terribly unfortunate, he said. A diode blew in one of the life support computers. When we tried to revive our cleaning staff, we discovered they'd been dead for nearly 30,000 years. Who's going to clear away the bodies? That's what I want to know. Look, why don't you sit yourself down over there and let me plug you in? What the heck? Let me reread that. He gestured Arthur toward the chair, which looked as if it had been made out of the rib cage of a stegosaurus. It was made out of the rib cage of a stegosaurus, explained the old man as he pottered about fishing bits of wire from under tottering piles of paper and drawing instruments. Here, he said, hold these, and passed a couple of strip wire ends to Arthur. The instant he took hold of them, a bird flew straight through him. He was suspended in midair and totally invisible to himself. Beneath him was a pretty tree-lined city square, and all around it, as far as the eye could see, were white concrete buildings of airy, spacious design, but somewhat the worse for wear. Many were cracked and stained with rain. Today, however, the sun was shining. A fresh breeze danced lightly through the trees, and the odd sensation that all the buildings were quietly humming was probably caused by the fact that the square and all the streets around it were thronged with cheerful, excited people. Somewhere a band was playing. Brightly colored flags were fluttering in the breeze, and the spirit of carnival was in the air. Arthur felt extraordinarily lonely, stuck up in the air above it all, without so much as a body to his name. But before he had time to reflect on this, a voice rang out across the square and called for everyone's attention. A man standing on a brightly dressed dais before the building, which clearly dominated the square, was addressing the crowd over a tannoy. O people who wait in the shadow of deep thought, he cried out, honored descendants of Vroomfondel and Majesties, the greatest and most truly interesting pundits the universe has ever known, the time of waiting is over. Wild cheers broke out among the crowd. Flags, streamers, and wolf whistles sailed through the air. The narrower streets looked rather like centipedes, rolled over on their backs and frantically waving their legs in the air. 7.5 million years our race was waited for this great and hopefully enlightening day, cried the cheerleader. The day of the answer. Hurrahs burst in the ecstatic crowd. Never again, cried the man. Never again will we wake up in the morning and think, who am I? What is my purpose in life? Does it really, cosmically speaking, matter if I don't get up and go to work? For today, we will finally learn once and for all the plain and simple answer to all these nagging little problems of life, the universe, and everything. As the crowd erupted once again, Arthur found himself gliding through the air and down toward one of the large, stately windows on the first floor of the building behind the dais from which the speaker was addressing the crowd. He experienced a moment's panic as he sailed straight through the window, which passed when a second or so later he found he had gone right through the solid glass without apparently touching it. No one in the room remarked on his peculiar arrival, which is hardly surprising, as he wasn't there. He began to realize that the whole experience was merely a recorded projection, which knocked 6 rack 70mm into a crooked hat. The room was much as Slarty Barfast had described it. In 7.5 million years, it had been well looked after and cleaned regularly every century or so. The ultra mahogany desk was worn at the edges, the carpet a little faded now, but the large computer terminal sat in sparkling glory on the desk's leather top, as bright as if it had been constructed yesterday. 2 severely dressed men sat respectfully before the terminal and waited. The time is nearly upon us, said one, and Arthur was surprised to see a word suddenly materialize in thin air just by the man's neck. The word was Lunkawi, and it flashed a couple of times and then disappeared again. Before Arthur was able to assimilate this, the other man spoke, and the word "fouch" appeared by his neck. What the heck? 75,000 generations ago, our ancestors set this program in motion, the second man said. And in all that time, we'll be the first to hear the computer speak. An awesome prospect, Fouch, agreed the first man, and Arthur suddenly realized he was watching a recording with subtitles. We are the ones who will hear, said Fouch. The answer to the great question of life. The universe, said Lunqua, and everything. Shh, said Lunqua, with a slight gesture. I think Deep Thought is preparing to speak. There was a moment's expectant pause while a panel slowly came to life on the front of the console. Lights flashed on and off experimentally and settled down into a business-like pattern. A soft, low hum came from the communication channel. Good morning, said Deep Thought at last. Good morning, oh Deep Thought, said Lunqual nervously. Do you have, that is, an answer for you? Interrupted Deep Thought majestically. Yes, I have. The 2 men shivered with expectancy. Their waiting had not been in vain. There really is one, breathed Fouch. There really is one, confirmed Deep Thought. To everything? To the great question of life, the universe, and everything? Yes. Both of the men had been trained for this moment. Their lives had been a preparation for it. They had been selected at birth as those who would witness the answer, but even as they found themselves gasping and squirming like excited children. Are you ready to give it to us? Urged Lunqual. I am. Now? Now, said Deep Thought. They both licked their dry lips. Though I don't think, added Deep Thought, that you're going to like it. Doesn't matter, said Fouch. We must know it now. Now? Yes, now. All right, said the computer and settled into silence again. The two men fidgeted. The tension was unbearable. You're really not going to like it. I'm dying, bro. Uh, Tell us. All right, said Deep Thought. The answer to the great question. Yes. Of life, the universe, and everything, said Deep Thought. Yes. Is, said Deep Thought. Yes. Is. Yes. 42. Fuck. With infinite majesty and calm. That's crazy. 42. That was pretty funny. That was pretty funny. Chapter 28. It was a long, long time before anyone spoke. Out of the corner of his eye, Fouch could see the sea of tense, expectant faces down in the square outside. We're going to get lynched, aren't we? He whispered. It was a tough assignment, said D Thought mildly. 42, yelled Linqua. Is that all you've got to show for 7.5 million years? Work? I checked it very thoroughly, said the computer, and that quite definitely is the answer. I think the problem, to be quite honest with you, is that you've never actually know what the question is. But it was the great question, the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. Howled Luqua. Yes, said D Thought, with the air of one who suffers fools gladly. But what actually is it? A slow, stupefied silence crept over the men as they stared at the computer and then at each other. Well, you know, it's just everything. Thing. Oh, I was covering the word with my thumb. It was everything. Everything, offered Pouch Weekly. Exactly, said D Thought. So once you do know what the question actually is, you'll know what the answer means. Oh, terrific, muttered Fouch, flinging aside the notebook and wiping away a tiny tear. Look, all right, said Luqua. Can you just please tell us the question? The ultimate question? Yes. Of life, the universe, and everything? Yes. D Thought pondered for a moment. Tricky, he said. Don't do this to me. Don't do this to me. Deep Thought pondered for a moment. But can you do it? Cried Lunqual. The Deep Thought pondered for another long moment. Finally, no, he said firmly. Both men collapsed onto their chairs in despair. But I'll tell you who can't. Tell us. Suddenly, Arthur began to feel his apparently non-existent scalp begin to crawl as he found himself moving slowly but inexorably forward inward toward the console. But it was only a dramatic zoom on the part of whoever had made the recording, he assumed. I speak of no one but the computer that is to come after me, intoned he thought. His voice regained his accustomed declamatory tones. A computer whose merest operational parameters I am now worthy to calculate, and yet I will design it for you. A computer that can calculate the question to the ultimate answer. A computer of such infinite and subtle complexity that organic life itself shall form part of its operational matrix. The organic life itself shall form part of its operational matrix. And you yourselves shall take on new forms and go down into the computer to navigate its 10 million year program. Yes, I shall design this computer for you, and I shall name it also unto you, and it shall be called the earth. That's an honor. Fouch gaped at deep thought. What a dull name, he said, and great incisions appeared down the length of his body. Lunkwald, too, suddenly sustained horrific gashes from nowhere. The computer console blotched and cracked, the walls flickered and crumbled, and the room crashed upward into its own ceiling. What? Slarty Bartfast was standing in front of Arthur holding the two wires. End of the tape, he explained. Chapter 29. Damn. That's crazy. Wait, the Earth is a fucking computer? What? That's crazy. What does that mean? That they're organic robots? Intricate. It will be a very intricate organic robot. Let's continue, boys. Chapter 29. Zaphod, wake up. Hey, come on, wake up. Just let me stick to what I'm good at, yeah? Muttered Zaphod and rolled away from the voice back to sleep. Do you want me to kick you, said Ford. Would it give you a lot of pleasure, said Zaphod blurrily. No, nor me. So what's the point? Stop bugging me. Zaphod curled himself up. He got a double dose of the gas, said Trillian, looking down at him. 2 windpipes. And stop talking, said Zaphod. It's hard enough trying to sleep anyway. What's the matter with the ground? It's all cold and horrid. It's gold, said Ford. With an amazingly balletic movement, Zaphod was standing and scanning the horizon because that was how far the gold ground stretched in every direction, perfectly smooth and solid. It gleamed like... It's impossible to say what it gleamed like because nothing in the universe gleams in quite the same way that a planet made of solid gold does. Who put all that there? Yelped Zaphod, goggle-eyed. Don't get excited, said Ford. It's only a catalog. A who? A catalog, said Trillian. An illusion. How can you say that? Cried Zaphod, falling to his hands and knees and staring at the ground. He poked it and prodded it. It was very heavy and very slightly soft. He could mark it with his fingernail. It was very yellow and very shiny, and when he breathed on it, his breath evaporated off it in that very peculiar and special way that breath evaporates off solid gold. What? Can you really do that? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think you could scratch. You can scratch gold. It just, it's actually fairly easy. I don't believe gold is that strong. Trillian and I came around a while ago, said Ford. We shouted and yelled till somebody came and then carried on shouting and yelling till they got fed up and put us in their planet catalog to keep us busy till they were ready to deal with us. This is all senso tape. Zaphod stared at him bitterly. Ah, shit, he said. You wake me up from my own perfectly good dream to show me somebody else's. He sat down in a huff. Hold on. What's that series of valleys over there? He said. Hallmark, said Ford. We had a look. We didn't wake you earlier, said Trillian. The last planet was knee-deep in fish. Fish? Some people like the oddest things. And before that, said Ford, we had platinum, Bit dull. We thought you'd like to see this one, though. Seas of light glared at them in one solid blaze wherever they looked. Very pretty, says Zaphod petulantly. In the sky, a huge green catalog number appeared. It flickered and changed, and then when they looked around again, so had the land. As with one voice, they all went, yuck. The sea was purple. The beach they were on was composed of tiny yellow and green pebbles, presumably terribly precious stones. The mountains in the distance seemed soft and undulating with red peaks. Nearby stood a solid silver beach table with a frilly mauve parasol and silver tassels. In the sky, a huge sign appeared replacing the catalog number. It said, whatever your taste, Magarathea can cater for you. We are not proud. And 500 entirely naked women dropped out of the sky on parachutes. You caught me? I said 500. Where is it? That's crazy. In a moment, the scene vanished and left them in a springtime meadow full of cows. Ow, says Zaphod, my brains. Oh, it was a dream. You want to talk about it, says Ford? Yeah, okay, says Zaphod. And all three sat down and ignored the scenes that came and went around them. I figured this, says Zaphod. Whatever happened to my mind, I did it. And I did it in, I told you. And I did it in such a way that it wouldn't be detected by the government screaming tests. And I wasn't to know anything about it myself. Pretty crazy, right? The other two nodded in agreement. So I reckon that's what's so secret that I can't let anybody know I know it. Not the galactic government. Not even myself. And the answer is I don't know. Obviously. But I put a few things together and I can begin to guess. When did I decide to run for president? Shortly after the death of President Ulay of Ranks. You remember you did, Ford? Alright, I'm burning out. Yeah, said Ford. He was that guy we met when we were kids. The Arcturian captain. He was a gas. He gave us conkers when you bust your way into his mega freighter. Said you were the most amazing kid he'd ever met. What's all this? Said Trillian. Ancient history, said Ford. When we were kids together on Beetlejuice. The Arcturian mega freighters used to carry most of the bulky trade between the galactic center and the outlying regions. The Beetlejuice trading scouts used to find the markets, and the Arcturians would supply them. There was a lot of trouble with space pirates before they were wiped out in the Daedalus Wars, and the mega freighters had to be equipped with the most fantastic defense shields known to galactic science. They were real brutes of ships and huge. In orbit around a planet, they would eclipse the sun. One day, young Zaphod here decides to raid one. On a trijet scooter designed for stratosphere work, a mere kid. I mean, forget it. It was crazier than a mad monkey. I went along for the ride because I got some very safe money on him not doing it, and didn't want him coming back with fake evidence. So what happens? We get in his trijet, which he had souped up into something totally other. Cross 3 parsecs in a matter of weeks. Bust our way into a mega freighter. I still don't know how. Marched onto the bridge, waving toy pistols and demanded conkers. A wilder thing I have not known. Lost me a year's pocket money for what? Conkers. The captain was this really amazing guy, Uden Franks, says Zaphod. He gave us food, booze, stuff from really weird parts of the galaxy. Lots of conquerors, of course, and we had just the most incredible time. Then he teleported us back into the maximum security wing of the Beetlejuice State Prison. He was a cool guy, went on to become president of the galaxy. Zaphod paused. The scene around them was currently plunged into gloom. Dark mist swirled around them, and elephantine shapes lurked indistinctly in the shadows. The air was occasionally rent with the sounds of illusory beings murdering other illusory beings. Presumably, enough people must have liked this sort of thing to make it a paying proposition. Ford, said Zaphod quietly. Yeah? Just before Yuden died, he came to see me. What? You never told me. No. What did he say? What did he come to see you about? He told me about the heart of gold. It was his idea that I should steal it. His idea? Yeah, said Zaphod, and the only possible way of stealing it was to be at the launching ceremony. Ford gaped at him in astonishment for a moment and then roared with laughter. Are you telling me, he said, that you set yourself up to become president of the galaxy just to steal that shit? That's it, said Zaphod, with the sort of grin that would get most people locked away in a room with soft walls. But why, said Ford. What's so important about having it? Don't know, said Zaphod. I think I consciously known that was what was so important about it, and what I would need it for it would have showed up on the brain screening test and I would never have passed. I think you done told me a lot of things that are still locked away. Let me get water. I might be able to finish this. I think Yuden told me a lot of things that are still locked away. So you think you went and mucked about inside your own brain as a result of Yuden talking to you? He was a hell of a talker. Yeah, but Zaphod, old mate, you want to look after yourself, you know? Zaphod shrugged. I mean, don't you have an inkling of the reasons for all this? Asked Ford. Zaphod thought hard about this and doubt seemed to cross his mind. No, he said at last. I don't seem to be letting myself into any of my secrets. Still, he added on further reflection, I can understand that. I wouldn't trust myself further than I could spit a rat. Dude, move. Sorry, that was my cat. A moment later, the last planet in the catalog vanished from beneath them, and the solid would resolve itself. And the solid world would resolve itself again. They were sitting in a plush waiting room, full of glass-topped tables and design awards. A tall Magarathian man was standing in front of them. The mice will see you now, he said. No way. Chapter 30. So there you have it, says Lord Barfast, making a feeble and perfunctory attempt to clear away some of the appalling mess of his study. He picked up a piece of paper from the top of a pile, but then couldn't think of anywhere else to put it, so he put it back on the top of the original pile, which promptly fell over. Deep thought designed the earth. We built it and you lived on it. And the Vogons came and destroyed it 5 minutes before the program was completed, added Arthur, not unbitterly. Yes, said the old man, pausing to gaze hopelessly around the room. 10 million years of planning and work gone like that. 10 million years. Earthman, can you conceive of that kind of time span? A galactic civilization could grow from a single worm 5 times over in that time. Gone. Man, my cat is being bad right now. Added Arthur now. Yes, said the old man, pausing to gaze hopelessly around the room. 10 million years of planning and work gone just like that. 10 million years. Earthman, can you conceive of that kind of time span? A galactic civilization could grow from a single worm 5 times over in that time. Gone. He paused. Well, that's bureaucracy for you, he added. You know, said Arthur thoughtfully, all this explains a lot of things. All through my life, I've had this strange, unaccountable feeling that something was going on in the world, something big, even sinister, and no one would tell me what it was. No, said the old man. That's just perfectly normal paranoia. Everyone in the universe has that. Everyone, said Arthur. Well, if everyone has that, perhaps it means something. Perhaps somewhere outside the universe we know. Maybe. Who cares? Said Lord Barfast before Arthur got too excited. Perhaps I'm old and tired, he continued, but I always think that the chances of finding out what really is going on are so absurdly remote that the only thing to do is to say, hang the scent on it, and just keep yourself occupied. Look at me. I designed coastlines. I got an award for Norway. He rummaged around in a pile of debris and pulled out a large plexiglass block with his name on it and a model of Norway modeled into it. Where's the sense in that? He said. None that I've been able to make out. I've been doing fjords all my life. For a fleeting moment, they became fashionable, and I get a major award. He turned it over in his hands with a shrug and tossed it aside carelessly, but not so carelessly that it didn't land on something soft. In this replacement Earth, we're building. They have given me Africa to do, and of course I'm doing it with all fjords again, because I happen to like them, and I'm old-fashioned enough to think that they give a lovely Baroque feeling to a continent, and they tell me it's not equatorial enough. Equatorial. He gave a howl laugh. What does it matter? Science has achieved some wonderful things, of course, but I'd far rather be happy than right any day. And are you? No, that's where it falls down, of course. Pity, said Arthur's sympathy. It sounded like quite a good lifestyle otherwise. Somewhere on the wall, a small white light flashed. Come, says Lord Farbast. You're to meet the mice. Bro, we already know. I mean, it's just 2 pages, but, Your arrival on the planet has caused considerable excitement. It has already been hailed, so I gather, as the 3rd most improbable event in the history of the universe. What were the first 2? Oh, probably just coincidences, said Slardifar Bast carelessly. He opened the door and stood waiting for Arthur to follow. Arthur glanced around him once more, and then down at himself, at the sweaty, disheveled clothes he had been lying in the mud in on Thursday morning. I seem to be having tremendous difficulty with my lifestyle, he muttered to himself. I beg your pardon, asked the old man mildly. Oh, nothing, said Arthur. Only joking. Poor guy. Oh, that's why there's a mouse in the front cover. I've never seen... I think I've seen super intelligent mice in stories before. What could he be doing in the other projects, I have no idea. My cat is being bad again. What a stupid cat. Yeah, I'm looking at you. She's winking. Figure she can get off. I'm thinking if I should continue or not. Alright, we'll go. Chapter 31. It is, of course, well known that careless talk costs lives. It is, of course, well known that careless talk about lives, but the full scale of the problem costs lives, but the full scale of the problem is not always appreciated. For instance, at the very moment that Arthur said, "I seem to be having tremendous difficulty with my lifestyle," a freak wormhole opened up in the fabric of the space-time continuum and carried the words far, far back in time across infinite reaches of space to a different galaxy, where strange and warlike beings were poised on the brink of frightful interstellar battle. The two opposing leaders were meeting for the last time. A dreadful silence fell across the conference table at the commander of the Wilhergs, resplendent in his black jewel battle shorts, gazed levelly at the Gugugvant leader, squatting opposite him in a cloud of sweet-smelling steam, and with a million sleek and horribly beam-powered star cruisers poised to unleash electric death at a single word of command. Challenged the vile creature to take back what it has said about his mother. The creature stirred in his sickly, broiling vapor, and at the very moment the words, "I seem to be having tremendous difficulty with my lifestyle," drifted across the conference table. Unfortunately, in the Volhug tongue, this was the most dreadful insult imaginable, and there was nothing for it but to wage terrible war for centuries. Eventually, of course, after the galaxy had been decimated over a few thousand years, it was realized that the whole thing had been a ghastly mistake, and so the two opposing battle fleets settled their few remaining differences in order to launch a joint attack on our own galaxy, now positively identified as the source of the offending remark. For thousands more years, the mighty ships tore across the empty wastes of space and finally dived screaming onto the first planet they came across, which happened to be Earth, where due to a terrible miscalculation of scale, the entire battle fleet was accidentally swallowed by a small dog. What? Those who study the complex interplay of course and effect in the history of the universe say that this sort of thing is going on all the time, but that we are powerless to prevent it. It's just life, they say. A short air car trip brought Arthur and the old Margrathian to a doorway. They left the car and went through the door into a waiting room full of glass-topped tables and plexiglass awards. Almost immediately, a light flashed above the door at the other side of the room, and they entered. "Arthur, you're safe," a voice cried. "Am I?" said Arthur, rather startled. "Oh, good." The lightning was rather subdued, and it took him a moment or so to see Ford, Trillian, and Zaphod sitting around a large table beautifully decked out with exotic dishes, strange sweetmeats, and bizarre fruits. They were stuffing their faces. "What happened to you?" demanded Arthur. "Well," said Zaphod, attacking a bowl full of grilled mussel, "our guests here have been gassing us and zapping our minds and being generally weird and have now given us a rather nice meal to make it up to us here," he said, hoiking out a lump of evil-smelling meat from a bowl. "Have some vegan rhino's cutlet. It's delicious, if you happen to like that sort of thing." "Host?" said Arthur. "What host? I don't see any," a small voice said. "Welcome to lunch, Earth creature." Arthur glanced around and suddenly yelped. "Ugh," he said. "These are mice on the table." There was an awkward silence as everyone looked pointedly at Arthur. He was busy staring at two white mice sitting at what looked like whiskey glasses on the table. He heard the silence and glanced around at everyone. Oh, he said with sudden realization. Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't quite prepared for. Let me introduce you, said Trillian. Arthur, this is Benji Mouse. Hi, said the other mice. His whiskers stroked what must have been a touch-sensitive panel on the inside of the whiskey glass-like affair, and it moved forward slightly. And this is Frankie Mouse. The other mouse said, pleased to meet you, and did likewise. Arthur gaped. Well, aren't they? Yes, said Trillian. They are the mice I brought with me from the earth. She looked at him in the eye, and Arthur thought he detected the tiniest resigned shrug. Could you pass me that bowl of grated Arcturian megadonkey, she said. Slarty Bartfast coughed politely. Excuse me, he said. Yes, thank you, Slarty Bartfast, said Benji Mouse sharply. You may go. What? Oh, very well, said the old man, slightly taken aback. I'll just go and get on with some of my fjords then. Ah, well, in fact, that won't be necessary, said Frankie Mouse. It looks very much as if we won't be needing the new Earth any longer. He swiveled his pink eyes a little. Not now that we have found a native on the planet who was 3 seconds before it was destroyed. What? Cried Slarty Bartfast aghast. You can't mean that. I've got 1,000 glaciers poised and ready to roll over Africa. Well, perhaps you can take a quick skiing holiday before you dismantle them, said Frankie acridly. Skiing holiday, cried the old man. Those glaciers are works of art. Elegantly sculpted contours, soaring pinnacles of ice, deep majestic ravines. It would be sacrilege to go skiing on high art. Thank you, Slarty Bartfast, said Benji firmly. That will be all. Yes, sir, said the old man coldly. Thank you very much. Well, goodbye, Earthmen, he said to Arthur. Hope the lifestyle comes together. With a brief nod to the rest of the company, he turned and walked sadly out the room. Arthur stared after him, not knowing what to say. Now, said Benji a Mouse, to business. Ford and Zaphod clinked their glasses together. To business, they said. I beg your pardon, said Benji. Ford looked round. Sorry, I thought you were proposing a toast, he said. The two mice scuttled impatiently around in their glass transports. Finally, they composed themselves, and Benji moved forward to address Arthur. Now, Earth Creature, he said, the situation we have in effect is this. We have, as you know, been more or less running to your planet for the last 10 million years in order to find this wretched thing called the ultimate question. Why? Said Arthur sharply. No, we already thought of that one, said Frankie, interrupting, but it doesn't fit the answer. Why 42? You see, it doesn't work. No, said Arthur. I mean, why have you been doing it? Oh, I see, said Frankie. Well, eventually, just habit, I think, to be brutally honest. And this is more or less the point. We're sick to the teeth with the whole thing, with the prospect of doing it all over, again on account of those Winnet Vidin Bogons. Quite frankly, it gives me the screaming heebie-jeebies. You know what I mean? It was by the merest lucky chance that Benji and I finished our particular job and left the planet early for a quick holiday, and have since manipulated our way back to Margrathia by the good offices of your friends. Margrathia is the gateway back to our own dimension, put in Benji. Since when? Continued his Maureen colleague. We have had an offer of a quite enormously fat contract to do the 5D chat show and lecture circuit back in our own dimensional neck of the woods, and we're very much inclined to take it. I would, wouldn't you, Ford? Said Zaphod promptingly. Oh, yes, said Ford. Jump at it like a shot. Arthur glanced at them, wondering what all this was leading up to. But we've got to have product, you see, said Frankie. I mean, ideally, we still need the ultimate question in some form or other. Zaphod leaned forward to Arthur. You see, he said, if they're just sitting there in the studio looking very relaxed and, just mentioning that they happen to know the answer to the life, universe, and everything, and then eventually have to admit that in fact it's 42, then the show's probably quite short. No follow-up, you see. We have to have something that sounds good, said Benji. Something that sounds good, exclaimed Arthur. An ultimate question that sounds good? From a couple of mice? The mice bristled. Well, yes, idealism. Yes, the dignity of pure research. Yes, the pursuit of truth in all its forms. But there comes a point, I'm afraid, where you begin to suspect that if there is any real truth, it's that the entire multi-dimensional infinity of the universe is almost certainly being run by a bunch of maniacs. And if it comes to a choice between spending yet another 10 million years finding that out, and on the other hand, just taking the money and running, then I, for one, could do with the exercise, said Frankie. But, started Arthur hopelessly. Hey, will you get this, Earthman, interrupted Zaphod. You are a last generation product of that computer matrix, right? And you were there right up to the moment your planet got the finger, yeah? So your brain was an organic part of the penultimate configuration of the computer program, said Ford. Rather lucidly, he thought. Right, says Zaphod. Well, said Arthur doubtfully, he wasn't aware of ever having felt an organic part of anything. He had always seen this as one of his problems. In other words, said Benji, steering his curious little vehicle right over to Arthur, there's a good chance that the entire structure of the question is encoded in the structure of your brain. So we want to buy it off you. What? The question? Said Arthur. Yes, said Ford and Trillian. For lots of money, says Zaphod. No, said Frankie. It's the brain we want to buy. What? Well, who would miss it? Inquired Benji. I thought you said you could just read the brain electronically, protested Ford. Oh, yes, said Frankie, but we'd have to get it out first. It's got to be prepared. Treat it, said Benji. Diced. Thank you, shouted Arthur, tipping up his chair and backing away from the table in order. It could always be replaced, said Benji reasonably, if you think it's important. Yes. An electronic brain, said Frankie. A simple one would suffice. A simple one, wailed Arthur. Yeah, said Zaphod with a sudden evil grin. You just have to program it to say what? And I don't understand, and where's the T? Who knows the difference? What? Cried Arthur, backing away still farther. See what I mean, said Zaphod and howled with pain because of something that Trillian did at that moment. I noticed the difference, said Arthur. No, you wouldn't, said Frankie Mouse. You'd be programmed not to. Ford made for the door. Look, I'm sorry, old lads, mice, he said. I don't think we got a deal. I rather think we have to have a deal, said the mice in chorus, all the charm vanishing from their piping little voices in an instant. With a tiny whining shriek, their two glass transports lifted themselves off the table and swung through the air toward Arthur, who stumbled further backward into a blind corner, utterly unable to cope or think of anything. Trillian grabbed him desperately by the arm and tried to drag him toward the door, which Ford and Zaphod were struggling to open. Oh, shit. But Arthur was dead weight. He seemed hypnotized by the airborne rodent swooping toward him. She screamed at him, but he just gaped. With one more yank, Ford and Zaphod got the door open. On the other side of it was a small pack of rather ugly men who they could only assume were the heavy mod of Margraphia. Not only were they ugly themselves, but the medical equipment they carried with them was also far from pretty. They charged. So, Arthur was about to have his head cut open. Trillian was unable to help him, and Ford and Zaphod were to be set upon by several thugs a great deal heavier and more sharply armed than they were. All in all, it was extremely fortunate that at that moment every alarm on the planet burst into an ear-splitting din. I remember in chapter 31 there was like an alien species in the beginning where Arthur's voice was traveled to the far reaches of the end of the galaxy, right? From a different galaxy. If they don't bring that up, that was a pointless passage. Pointless. Chapter 32. Emergency! Emergency! Blared the klaxons throughout Margraphia. Hostile ship has landed on planet. Armed intruders in Section 8A. Defense stations. Defense stations. The two mice sniffed irritably around the fragments of their glass transports where they lay shuttered on the floor. Damnation, muttered Frankie Mouse. All that fuss over 2 pounds of earthling brain. He scuttled around and about, his pink eyes flashing, his fine coat bristling with static. The only thing we can do now, said Benji, crouching and stroking his whiskers in thought, is to try and fix a question, invent one that will sound plausible. Difficult, said Frankie. He thought, how about what's yellow and dangerous? Benji considered this for a moment. No good, he said. Doesn't fit the answer. They sank into silence for a few seconds. All right, said Benji. What do you get if you multiply 6 by 7? No, too literal, too factual, said Frankie. Wouldn't sustain the punter's interest. Again, they thought. Then Frankie said, here's a thought. How many roads must a man walk down? Ah, said Benji. Uh-huh. Now that does sound promising. He rolled the phrase around a little. Yes, he said. That's excellent. Sounds very significant. Without actually tying you down and meaning anything at all. How many roads must a man walk down? 42. Excellent. That'll fox him. Frankie, baby, we are made. They performed a scampering dance in their excitement. Near them on the floor lay several rather ugly men who had been hit about the head with some heavy design awards. With a half a mile away, 4 figures pounded up a corridor looking for a way out. They emerged into a wide, open-door computer bay. They glanced about wildly. Which way you reckon, Zaphod? Said Ford. At a wild guess, I'd say down here, said Zaphod, running off down at the right between a computer bank and the wall. As the others started after him, he was brought short by a kilozap energy bolt that cracked through the air inches in front of him and fried a small section of the adjacent wall. A voice on a bullhorn said, "Okay, Beeble Brox, hold it right there. We've got you covered." "Cops," hissed Zaphod, and spun around in a crouch. You want to try a guess at all, Ford?" "Okay, this way," said Ford. And the 4 of them ran down a gangway between 2 computer banks. At the end of the gangway appeared a heavily armored and space-suited figure waving a vicious kilozap gun. "We don't want to shoot you, Beeble Brox," shouted the figure. "Suits me fine," shouted Zaphod back and dived down a wide gap between 2 data process units. The others swerved in behind him. "There are 2 of them," said Trillian. "We're cornered." They squeezed themselves down in an angle between a large computer data bank and the wall. They held their breath and waited. Suddenly, the air exploded with energy bolts as both the cops opened fire on them simultaneously. "Hey, they're shooting at us," said Arthur, crouching in a tight ball. "I thought they said they didn't want to do that." "Yeah, I thought they said that," agreed Ford. Zaphod struck a head up for a dangerous moment. "Hey," he said, "I thought you said you didn't want to shoot us," and ducked again. They waited. After a moment, a voice replied, It isn't easy being a cop." "What did he say?" whispered Ford in astonishment. "He said it isn't easy being a cop." "Well, surely that's his problem, isn't it?" "I'd have thought so." Ford shouted out, "Hey, listen, I think we've got enough problems of our own having you shooting at us, so if you could avoid laying your problems on us as well, I think we'd all find it easier to cope." Another pause and then the bullhorn again. "Now, see here, guys," said the voice. "You're not dealing with any dumb two-bit trigger-pumping morons with low hairlines, little piggy eyes, and no conversation. We're a couple of intelligent, caring guys that you'd probably quite like if you met us socially. I don't go around gratuitously shooting people and then bragging about it afterward in seedy Space Rangers bars like some cops I would mention. I go around shooting people gratuitously, and then I go agonize about it afterwards for hours to my girlfriend. And I write novels," claimed in the other cop, "though I haven't had any of them published yet, so I better warn you, I'm in a mean mood." Ford's eyes popped halfway out of their sockets. "Who are these guys?" he said. "Don't know," said Zaphod. "I think I preferred it when they were shooting." "So are you going to come quietly," shouted one of the cops again, "or are you going to let us blast you out?" "Which would you prefer?" shouted Ford. A millisecond later, the air about them started to fry again, as bolt after bolt of kilozap hurled itself into the computer bank in front of them. The fuselage continued for several seconds, unbearably intensity. At unbearably intensity. When it stopped, there were a few seconds of near quietness as the echoes died away. "You still there?" called one of the cops. "Yes," they called back. "We didn't enjoy doing that at all," shouted the other cop. "We could tell," shouted Ford. "Now listen to this, Beeble Rocks, and you better listen good." "Why?" shouted back Zaphod. "Because," shouted the cop, "it's going to be very intelligent, quite interesting and humane. Now, either you all give yourselves up now and let us beat you up a bit, though not very much, of course, because we are firmly opposed to needless violence, or we blow up this entire planet, and possibly one or two others we notice on our way out here." "But that's crazy," cried Trillian. "You wouldn't do that." "Oh, yes, we would," shouted the cub. Wouldn't we?" he asked the other one. "Oh, yes, we'd have to, no question," the other one called back. "But why?" demanded Trillian. "Because there are some things you have to do even if you are an enlightened liberal cop who knows all about sensitivity and everything." "I just don't believe these guys," muttered Ford, shaking his head. One cop shouted to the other, "Shall we shoot them again for a bit?" "Yeah, why not?" Then let fly another. They let fly another electric barrage. The heated noise was quite fantastic. Slowly, the computer bank was beginning to disintegrate. The front had almost melted away, and thick rivulets of molten metal were winding their way back toward where they were squatting. They huddled farther back and waited for the end. No way. Just a couple of cops are gonna end our adventure. Just a couple of hogs. Chapter 33. But the end never came, at least not then. Quite suddenly the barrage stopped, and the sudden silence afterwards was punctuated by a couple of strangled gurgles and thuds. The four stared at each other. "What happened?" said Arthur. "They stopped," said Zaphod with a shrug. "Why?" "Don't know. Do you want to go and ask them?" "No." Then they waited. "Hello?" "Oh," called out Ford. No answer. "That's odd. Perhaps it's a trap. They haven't the wit." "What were those thuds?" "Don't know." They waited for a few more seconds. "Right," said Ford. I'm going to have a look." He glanced around at the others. "Is no one going to say, 'No, you can't possibly let me go instead'?" They all shook their heads. "Oh well," he said, and stood up. For a moment, nothing happened. Then after a second or so, nothing continued to happen. Ford peered through the thick smoke that was billowing out of the burning computer. Cautiously, he stepped out into the open. Still, nothing happened. 20 yards away, he could dimly see through the smoke the spacesuited figure as one of the cops. He was lying in a crumpled heap on the ground. 20 yards in the other direction lay the second man. No one else was anywhere to be seen. This struck Ford as being extremely odd. Slowly, nervously, he walked toward the first one. The body lay reassuringly still as he approached it, and continued to lie reassuringly still as he reached it, and put his foot down on the kilozap gun that still dangled from its limp fingers. He reached down and picked it up, meeting no resistance. The cop was quite clearly dead. A quick examination revealed him to be from Blagulon Kappa. He was a methane-breathing life form, dependent on his spacesuit for survival in the thin oxygen atmosphere of Magrathia. The tiny life support system computer on his backpack appeared unexpectedly to have blown up. Ford poked around in it in a considerable astonishment. These miniature suit computers usually had the full backup of the main computer back on the ship, with which they were directly linked through the sub-ether. Such a system was fail-safe in all circumstances other than total feedback malfunction, which was unheard of. He hurried over to the other prone figure and discovered that exactly the same impossible thing had happened to him, presumably simultaneously. He called the others over to look. They came, shared his astonishment, but not his curiosity. Let's get shot of this hole," said Zaphod. "If whatever I'm supposed to be looking for is here, I don't want it." He grabbed the second kilozap gun, blasted a perfectly harmless accounting computer, and rushed out into the corridor, followed by the others. He very nearly blasted hell out of an air car that stood waiting for them a few yards away. The air car was empty, but Arthur recognized it as belonging to Slartibarfast. It had a note from him pinned to part of its sparse instrument panel. The note had a note from him pinned to part of its sparse instrument panel. The note had an arrow drawn on it, pointing at one of the controls. It said, "This is probably the best button to press." I thought that was the end of the book. I was like, I guess. This might be the last chapter. If not, maybe one more. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Boys, by Douglas Adams. Let's do this. The air car rocketed them at speeds in excess of R-17 through the steel tunnels that led out onto the appalling surface of the planet, which was now in the grip of yet another drear morning twilight. Ghastly gray light congealed on the land. R is a velocity measure, defined as a reasonable speed of travel that is consistent with health, mental well-being, and not being more than, say, 5 minutes late. It is therefore clearly an almost infinitely variable figure according to circumstances, since the first two factors vary not only with speed taken as an absolute, but also with awareness of the third factor. Unless handled with tranquility, this equation can result in considerable stress, ulcers, and even death. R-17 is not a fixed velocity, but it is clearly far too fast. The air car flung itself through the air at R-17 and above, deposited them next to the heart of gold, which stood starkly on the frozen ground like a bleached bone, and then, precipitately, hurled itself back in the direction whence they had come, presumably on important business of its own. Shivering, the four of them stood and looked at the ship. Beside it stood another one. It was the Blagulan Kappa police craft, a bulbous shark-like affair, slate green in color and smothered with black stenciled letters of varying degrees of size and unfriendliness. The letters informed anyone who caused to read them as to where the ship was from, what section of the police it was assigned to, and where the power feeds should be connected. It seemed somehow unnaturally dark and silent, even for a ship whose two-man crew was at that moment lying asphyxiated in a smoke-filled chamber several miles beneath the ground. It is one of those curious things that is impossible to explain or define, but one can sense when a ship is completely dead. Ford could sense it and found it most mysterious. A ship and two policemen seemed to have gone spontaneously dead. In his experience, the universe simply didn't work like that. The other three could sense it too, but they could sense the bitter cold even more and hurried back into the heart of gold, suffering from an acute attack of no curiosity. Ford stayed and went to examine the Blagulan ship. As he walked, he nearly tripped over an inert steel figure lying face down in the cold dust. "Marvin," he exclaimed, "what are you doing?" "Don't feel you have to take any notice of me, please," came a muffled drone. But how are you, Metal Man?" said Ford, very depressed. "What's up?" "I don't know," said Marvin. "I've never been there." "Why?" said Ford, squatting down beside him and shivering. "Are you lying face down in the dust?" "It's a very effective way of being wretched," said Marvin. "Don't pretend you want to talk to me. I know you hate me." "No, I don't." "Yes, you do. Everybody does. It's part of the shape of the universe. I only have to talk to somebody and they begin to hate me. Even robots hate me. If you just ignore me, I expect it shall probably go away." He jacked himself up to his feet and stood resolutely facing the opposite direction. "That ship hated me," he said dejectedly, indicating the police craft. "That ship?" said Ford in a sudden excitement. "What happened to it? Do you know?" "It hated me because I talked to it." "You talked to it?" exclaimed Ford. "What do you mean you talked to it?" "Simple. I got very bored and depressed, so I went and plugged myself into its external computer feed. I talked to the computer at great length and explained my view of the universe to it," said Marvin. "And what happened?" pressed Ford. "It committed suicide," said Marvin, and stalked off back to the heart of gold. What? That's funny. He literally made that chapter just for a damn joke. That's crazy. Chapter 35. That night, as the Heart of Gold was busy putting a few light years between itself and the Horsehead Nebula, Zaphod lounged under the small palm tree on the bridge, trying to bang his brain into shape with massive pan-galactic gargle blasters. Ford and Trillian sat in a corner discussing life and matters arising from it, and Arthur took to his bed to flip through Ford's copy of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Since he was going to have to live in the place, he reasoned he better start finding out something about it. He came across this entry. It said, "The history of every major galactic civilization tends to pass through three distinct and recognizable phases. Those are survival, inquiry, and sophistication, otherwise known as the how, why, and where phases. For instance, the first phase is characterized by the question, how can we eat? The second by the question, why do we eat? And the third by the question, where shall we have lunch?" He got no further before the ship's intercom buzzed into life. "Hey, Earthman, you hungry, kid?" said Zaphod's voice. Well, yes, a little pickish, I suppose," said Arthur. "Okay, baby, hold tight," said Zaphod. We'll take in a quick bite at the restaurant at the end of the universe." Oh, sorry guys, I was just reading acknowledgements. Look, about the author. Douglas Adams was born in Cambridge, England in 1952 and was educated at Brentwood School, Essex, before attending St. John's College, Cambridge, where he received a BA and later an MA in English literature. A writer for radio, television, and theater, he was the creator of all the various manifestations of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which started as a radio show and then became a series of novels, a TV show, an album, a computer game, and several stage adaptations. Adams died in 2001. Extremely funny, inspired lunacy, and over much too soon. I agree. This is really short. This is cool. I was hoping for a little more drama, a little more stakes. This was very interesting. The mice, I mean, this is a 4 out of 5. I'm going to give this book a 4 out of 5. It was cool. It was fun. I liked the topics. It was, there were stakes. He lost his house. He's trying to live a new life while he lost his world, metaphorically and physically. And I had one more point. It was just funny. It was cool. I wasn't dying, but the jokes were pretty good. Favorite character? Marvin was really funny. I really liked the mice. Arthur is relatable. They're all cool. Ford is cool. They're all pretty cool. I like them all. They're all my favorite character. This was a fun read. I can't I'm gonna read the second book too. We'll see whenever that happens. It's gonna take a while. I'm gonna finish my library. The next book I'm reading is The Hobbit, followed by, I don't know, maybe I Am Legend, I think. So we'll see whenever I get to the restaurant at the end of the universe. But thank you for this readathon. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for staying for a second, 5 minutes, 2 minutes. It doesn't matter. Thanks for checking out the thumbnail. And I hope you guys have a great one. That was my read through and reaction. Not that it was entertaining, but it was fun. For you, I mean, I hope probably, I was so tired. Like I was burning through that book. You know what I mean? I was like, all right, dogs. Take care of yourselves. Maybe I'll reply to the comments if it's any questions. So we'll see what happens. Thank you. Have a good day.